Welcome to the Parenting with Confidence podcast. I am your host, Teresa Alexander Inman, board certified behavior analyst and infant toddler developmental specialist. So today we're going to talk about money.
Yay!
Yes. Rachel Murphy is here to help us with that. Now, Rachel has worked with young people for almost 25 years as a youth director, a foster parent, a mentor to young adults, and a mom to 5 children ages 8 to 24. Through the years, she's become aware of how many teens lack easily taught life skills that would help them as they launch out into their own families, launch them out on their own. Her family started Confident Teens to help people and leadership to help teach life and leadership skills to teens and their parents. She is the main host of the Raising Confident Teens podcast. And Rachel is also the author of the newly released book, I love this, I Am Not Your ATM, which is a practical plan for teaching your teens to manage money. Welcome, Rachel.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
Oh gosh, it's my absolute pleasure. I wish I had you as a teen to know, or actually when I was younger, I mean, my mom was great with money, but she didn't teach us how to be great with money. At least I didn't get the lesson. Maybe my siblings didn't, but I didn't get that lesson. And I wish I had. So I want to impart to parents and children information that I wish I had. So welcome.
Yeah. It is such a taboo topic, isn't it? For so many people.
It is.
It's like, don't ask, don't tell.
Yes, it's so true. I don't remember my mom talking about money when I was younger. She's like, she was saving, she was doing this, but she didn't tell us how or what to do until much older. And I was like, oh, I wish I'd learned.
A lot of times they think they're teaching it. Like, they may say to you, hey, you need to save money. But what does that really mean to a kid, right? It's more like Charlie Brown's teachers. All we hear is like, wah, wah, wah. Like, lectures are not the way kids get the lessons, from what I can tell.
It's so true. So true, honestly. And in my work, I tell parents that too. Please, lectures are not helping. Stay away from them because, they're just a fancy way of chastising and reprimanding.
Well, we feel like we did something when we're done.
Right. Yeah. But then is it about us or is it about our children?
That's right.
The question. So.
And a lot of parents, their parents didn't teach them, so they don't really know how to do it, or they feel like I'm not really doing that well myself. I don't feel like I'm adequate to teach that to my kid.
So true. And that's why we're so happy to have a Rachel Murphy in our circle. So I just want to ask, what's the youngest age you think parents should start teaching children, money literacy?
Probably as soon as they can start grasping this means something. This quarter means something, right? The lessons don't have to be that large. Like, you could start with counting money. Hey, this is how you count money, right? And then this is how you make change. And then transition to more like, hey, let's do some jobs and get some pay. Help me do this and maybe I'll give you some money. I'm not one of those parents that, I'm going to pay my kids exorbitant amounts for doing chores around the house, because I think that teaches them an unrealistic lesson on life, right? Like, hey, if you wash the dishes, I'm going to pay you $20. Well, how much did their time work out to be there, right? You're paying them, the equivalent of $80,000 a year or something when you do that, right? I want them. I do pay my kids sometimes for chores, but I want them to go out and start their own businesses and get jobs and feel like, hey, I'm getting a better rate of return here than I did at home. So I'm motivated to go out there and work for other people.
Awesome. I love that. And, it reminded me of my friend, Carrie, who and her son, Tristan, was, I think, a year and a half there was $1 on the floor, and he picked it up and he said $1. And she was so embarrassed that her child, it's like, oh my gosh, people must think I'm teaching my child to be like, about money. And it just had a negative connotation with her at the time. And I thought, wow, like I haven't thought about that for years until now. But yeah, we had a negative connotation with money. And that needs to change because we need to learn.
Yeah, it's not good. I mean, think about it. If we people act like if we don't talk about it, maybe it'll be all right. But it's more like the opposite happens. If we don't talk about it, how are they going to learn? They're going to learn from their friends who probably weren't taught either. So the lesson might be very, very twisted, right? And they're not going to go to a professor or somebody and say, "Hey, can you teach me about money?" Because that's really not very cool, right? So they're going to have to learn it from you, mom and dad, and you're going to have to just if your kid has any other kind of issue, they're struggling in reading, they're struggling with math, do you just say, well, you'll get it later? Or do you sit down and say, hey, let's learn about this? Even if you do not know how to teach them at this time, you're going to figure it out. So just put on your big girl panties and figure it out.
There you go. That's right. Just do it, parents. So you said start as soon as they're ready. So basically, my friend whose son was like a year and a half and said, $1, that would have been a great place for her to start with that financial literacy because he's aware of money and maybe has an idea of the value of it.
Right. Yeah. Money is really important and we act like it's not. Like, but if you don't have it, what's going to happen? It's like air. It's not important until you don't have it, right? Yeah, I think the more you normalize it, the less it'll be weird. And I don't mean that you have to tell your kids how much money you make. My kids don't know how much we make, but there's still many lessons around money that can go on without specific details.
Mm-hmm.
You could talk about, hey, oh, you really like that car? How much do you think that cost? And how much would you have to be making to be able to buy something like that? And if you don't have the money to pay for it cash, how much would that cost you a month? Right? Like that kind of lessons.
Yeah.
Make it real.
Awesome. Yeah, I love it because I'm all about naturalistic teaching. So you're embedding that lesson in real life in a situation where the child is motivated or the teen is motivated to get something. And you're basically talking to them about, you're teaching them in that moment the value of money and how they could, obtain that money or earn that money to get what they want.
Yeah, I'm all about let's make this as real life as possible. So I'm just going to tell you my book in a nutshell. Like if I tell you this, you can figure it out on your own. You can get the book if you want more details. But this is how we teach our kids about money. So a lot of people do the saving, giving, spending envelopes or jars, which I think is a great start when they're little. That gets them into the realization of like, oh, I don't get to blow it all, right? There's other things. But I think that that's not really realistic because as an adult, who gets to save 10%, give 10%, and blow 80% of their money? Nobody, right? So what we do with our kids when they get to be about 10, 11, 5th, 6th grade, we start turning over the budget to them for things that are related to them. So like you spend tons of money on your kids all the time and you don't even think about it. You just pay, right? Oh, mom, I need new clothes. Okay. Oh, mom, I need a backpack. Okay. Oh, mom, can we all go out for ice cream? Okay. So how about if you take those everyday moments and turn them into learning opportunities, right? So we start small, like at our house, we live in Florida. So a lot of times we go out, do yard work. Oh man, it's hot. Let's go get ices, right? Let's go to the gas station and get an icy. What if when they're about 10, you start saying, hey, instead of mom paying for the ices every time, I'm going to give you an icy budget. Say we go once a week. How about I give you $5? Right. And you are in charge of this for the month. And if you blow it on something else, when we go get ices, you won't get an icy. Now that lesson will hurt a tiny bit, but I'd rather them learn that lesson on an icy than on a car that they went out and bought they didn't have the money for, right? And then that's how we start. And then every year we add more categories and they get a bigger salary. So we're spending the same amount of money, but we're redirecting it. Like, okay, it's the first of the month. Here's your salary, and you're responsible for these categories. And then by the time they graduate high school, they've been managing, 12, 15 categories for several years, and they're very confident in money and what it means. And, there's so many categories that you spend, like school supplies, school lunches, clothing, makeup, toiletries, Christmas gifts for their teachers. Maybe you buy birthday gifts for their friends, gasoline. There's so many things that you're spending that they are vested in, right? Like it is important to them. And if you can start slowly turning that over to them, they become a lot more aware. You hear parents say, they just don't understand the value of money. They come to me all the time asking for money. I bought them clothes and I find them laying on their floor with the tags still on them and they don't even fit them anymore. Well, if they were to start having to spend their own money for the clothes, they're going to start becoming a lot more mindful of, oh, that cost me so much. I'm not going to wear it. I better take it back. Right.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. Oh my gosh. I
Yeah.
never honestly would have thought of any of that.
Yeah. And I have 5 kids. So we used to go out to restaurants and it would be like, okay, everybody, we're getting water. Right. The water speech. Because, $3 a pop, that adds up.
Mhm.
Once you start turning that over to that always made me feel guilty. Like, oh, they're mad at me because I'm making them get water. Once you start turning over, they have their own restaurant budget, you'll notice, oh, they're getting water because they realize, it's not just meaningless money. It's, hey, if I don't spend the $3 here, I'm going to have $3 more to put towards something else. Right.
Yes, my mind's blown. Sorry, excuse me. I'm sitting here thinking, oh my gosh, that's amazing. Well, thankfully, my granddaughter is still young enough that I could teach her these skills because it's way too late for my own children. So,
Yeah. But
wow.
like just think about how we teach kids to do things, like how we teach our kids to drive. When we teach our kids to drive, we start out in the parking lot at the church down the road, and
Mhm.
then we go maybe to a subdivision, and then we go to a road that's not very busy, and then maybe we'll go into a road that's busier, then we'll go into town, then we'll go on the interstate, right? And
Yes.
then we'll go to Atlanta. But
Mhm.
we don't start out, a lot of people, they start out in the parking lot and then they kind of miss all the steps in between, and then they just throw them out on the freeway in Atlanta at night in the rain, right?
Wow, yeah.
And hey, good luck with that, right? um and it's not a condemnation of parents because they just don't know how to teach it, right? They think that the lecture, the hey, don't get into debt, well, what does that mean, right? Or don't spend more than you make. Well, how do I do that? How to show me how to do that. So they get the practice of budgeting every month. They get the practice of reconciling. They learn about sinking funds because, at girls' haircuts, we don't get them every month, but when we get them, sometimes they're expensive, right? So maybe I got to set a little bit every month, kind of like car insurance, right? The
Right.
same concept that people don't. No one teaches you. Oh, you better put some aside because in 6 months that bill's coming.
Right.
um, they learn about, oh, maybe I need some slush money, like maybe I need a cushion. There's so many things that they are learning naturally that way, but you're not lecturing. They're learning it by natural circumstances. And it's it gives them something that every teenager really, really, really loves, which is control. Like
Yes.
there's so many things we cannot give them control over. I'm not going to be letting you sleep around at my house anyway, and I'm not going to be letting you do stuff that I don't agree with. But this is something I can give you control in, because no kid likes to go up and say, well, I got to go ask my mom and dad if I can go with you, if I got any money,
Yes.
right? But they know, hey, if I set aside so much for hanging out with my friends, then I can just spend it, right? I don't have to like beg or.
Wow. No, that's awesome. So you give them a salary at the beginning of the month and then they have to budget it
Right.
and they're responsible for it. So if it runs out before, like they say, if there's more month at the end of their money, then that's on them. They have to, it's like that's a natural consequence then of not budgeting or
Right. Well, they're kids, so there's grace here, right? But if it's something they knew was coming up, then yeah, it's on them. But if they grew 3 times in a month, then I'm kind of more understanding, like, hey, yeah, I'll buy you another pair of shoes, right?
Right.
But if it's something that they knew about and they had a plan for, if something comes up at school that nobody knew about, yeah, mom's gonna help out. Um, but I'm not so quick if it's something they want to do and they didn't know about. I am not so quick to hand out money. I am more along the lines of, hey, how are we going to solve that? And
Mm.
I've had kids, with 5 kids, a lot of expenses come up. One year, they're like, "Hey, there's a trip." The candy bar sales, don't you love those? There's a trip that I could sell candy bars and go, but I still need some spending money. Okay, I'll let you go, but you need to come up with the spending money,
Mhm.
right? So that kid said, "Okay, how?" I'm like, "Let's figure something out." I'm like, "How about we post on my Facebook because this particular kid loved to bake. How about you do 3 different kinds of desserts and you put them up for sale?" And do a little pop-up shop on my Facebook and I'll take orders. And that's how she paid for that trip.
Nice.
Right. So um they can go out and earn money. Like people love to help kids earn money.
Yes.
Way more than they would. Like if you or I were to say, hey, I'm doing about, like some people might, but a kid will get way more people helping them out. And then that boosts their confidence, right? And then they're like, hey, I can earn money. Right.
So true. It made me remember a young man who was walking around with a lawnmower, just asking people if he could mow their lawns. It's like, I just was like, listen, just take this. We don't need our lawn mowed. But just the fact that you're out there doing this and you're willing to do work to get, to earn what the money for what you want, it impressed me so much.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they learn a lot when they do that kind of stuff.
Oh,
My kids have all these little businesses. They've learned so much about people skills and handling money. And, you've got to do what you say when you say you're going to do it.
mm.
Right.
So at what age did your first child, like what was the youngest who started a business? At what age?
One of my kids at 11, he said to us, I really want to learn how to do small engine repair.
Mm.
And we said, huh, well, neither of us know anything about that, but sure, go ahead. So he started YouTubing and Googling, and went to the local um, state college, and they do adult education classes. And we called them and said, hey, would it be all right if he came in and took this small engine repair class that you guys are doing? And the teacher was like, you know what? I would love that because I remember being like that as a kid. So he was 11 years old in that class. We had to go with him because he had to have an adult. And it was him and a bunch of senior citizen men. And he knew, like, the teacher would ask a question and he'd be like, because he had done so much learning. If your kid is interested in something, they will learn a lot about it.
Oh,
Right. Um, and when our kids were little, we kind of did a crazy thing. We built our own log home. We had no construction experience. We took a 2-day class and came home and spent 3.5 years building the house. And so they watched us learn how to learn. Like
mhm.
they've realized you can just teach yourself stuff, right?
Right.
Like when you get stuck, you just Google and figure out and call for help. But so I think that contributes to the atmosphere of learning. But if you can, kids kids can learn so much more than we think they can,
Yes.
and that will bring them confidence. And it doesn't have to be a big thing like building a house. It could be like learning to cook or learning to drive or learning how to do a home repair or just learning a sports skill, right? The more they learn, the more confident they become and the more willing they'll be to learn more things.
Yes, it's a beautiful snowball when that happens.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think too, so often though, as parents, we want to help our children so much that we end up disabling them because we want to be in control of everything. It's like, give my child, I don't know, $200 a month and have them figure out how to spend it. Isn't that better than, waiting, like you said, till, when they have their own cars or condos and it's like, oh, well, I don't have enough money for my rent or mortgage. Can I come back home or whatever
Yeah.
it is, you know? So it's really important to start. And I love that you tied in what they're interested in, because that makes it so much more, they become more vested, like you said.
Right.
When they're interested in something, they will just dive in and give it their all. And we're just here to encourage that.
Yeah. And to clarify, we don't start out giving them 200 a month. We start out with the icy, but
Yeah,
maybe
the
$5 a month, and then you
yeah.
add to it, and then you're like, if you're responsible, you get more money,
Okay.
right? And then if you're not responsible, we're going to pull back. So that, yeah, so they realize that how I act is going to determine, my salary, my responsibilities, what I'm allowed to do.
Wow, that is beautiful. And like I said, I wish I had all this information years and years ago.
Well, yeah, you can only do what you can do, right?
Yep,
But then it's the
exactly.
next generation we can help.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I really hope parents are, taking heed to all of this great information, because these are just simple tools that they can use to help teach their children financial literacy. And then also that bleeds out is probably not a good word, but it filters into adulthood, because, as statistics show, a lot of divorces happen because of money.
Yes,
And if
yes,
your child goes into a relationship with financial literacy, then their chances of remaining married, remaining in that relationship, are exponentially increased.
yeah. It affects your grandchildren,
Yeah.
right? And I want my grandchildren to live in a two-parent home, not a product of divorce, because that is the leading cause of divorce. And when you get divorced, does that help your money problem? I think it makes it worse.
It certainly
Because now
does.
you got two houses and therapy and a divorce lawyer, right? Um,
Exactly.
yeah. So a lot of the lessons we learn by trial and error that we don't necessarily have to learn by trial and error if we just do a little bit of pre-planning on the front end.
Yes, yes. And the sad thing is, sometimes we just don't know what to plan for.
Yeah.
Like, I know what I want to do, but I don't know how to execute, which is why it's really wonderful that there are people like you out there teaching and supporting people through this process, because it's an essential life skill.
Yes, it is. You know, in full disclosure here, my husband and I went through big money troubles when we first got married. We got ourselves we owned our own business. We owned an internet service provider back when the internet was first coming out. Um, when you had to dial in and you
Yeah.
heard that horrible noise. That was us. You would dial into us. We ended up $50,000 in debt when we sold that business, and we had no jobs, and we were making 30,000 a year. And it took us 5 years to dig out of that. And it was so hard, and we were so ashamed. Like, we did not talk about what we went through for more than 20 years. Like, our parents didn't know all that we had gone through, because it was a taboo topic, and you didn't want to admit, I'm not succeeding at this. And so people kept coming to us and saying, I wish I'd learned about money when I was a kid. And we're like, yes, this is something we really need to start talking about. And so we started telling our story, and people were like, wow, your story gave me hope, because I thought I had one impression of you, and now I have another impression of you, right? Like, because they thought, oh, you guys got it all together. You seem like you're doing well, but you don't know people's backstories, right? You don't know what they had to go through to get where they are. And because of what we went through, we said we don't want our kids to have to go through this. And I don't want anybody's kids to have to go through this. And if I can help your kids not have to go through this, I'm going to do what I can to help. So that's how that book, the whole book came about. It's like, but we can share it with more people if we can turn it into a book, right?
Definitely. And see, I had the idea that maybe you learned this as a child, so now you're teaching it to everybody because you've had this wonderful money story.
No, my parents actually were very, very good with money. They were wizards. I do not know how they did it. My dad was enlisted military, and they were big givers. They put through several of my aunts and uncles through college, and on an enlisted military income. And they taught me, I learned a lot by example from them, but like you said, marriage is two people. And my husband came in, and his parents, they say they taught him about money. He says They didn't teach him because it was not a way that was relevant to him.
Mm-hmm.
And so you got to be careful who you marry. Like I'd still have married him, but it does affect everything you do. Like if one of you was taught good and one of you was not, then you're going to struggle until you both get on the same page. But yeah, we struggled. We lived in the worst neighborhood in town. We drove a $1,500 car. You know, our entertainment budget for the month would be like $1.07 because we would get a red box, right? During those 5 years when we were digging out. And a lot of it could have been avoided because our mindset was not right. Like we felt like failures because of what we had gone through with the business loss. And then he was in IT. So that was during the .com crash. So we went through 3 layoffs in 9 months and we just felt like losers. Like everything we do is a failure, right? And so our mind was not in a good place. So he drove a taxi for 6 years and we just were so beat down and we didn't try. We weren't really trying. I mean, we were digging out of debt, but we didn't believe in ourselves enough to do bigger things, right? Yeah. To think that we could go back into that field. It took him a long time to get back into IT. But nowadays with podcasts and there's so much that you can do if you're in a place like that where you're struggling, where you feel like I'm a loser, I'm not making enough money, I'm never going to be out of this environment that I'm in. I'm here to say that I believe in you and you can get out of that and fill your mind with podcasts like this. There are so many good podcasts out there on mindset and on money and on, teaching you stuff that you can get for free these days, that we never had when we were trying to dig out.
So true. My goodness. Yes. So please avail yourself of the wealth of information that there is out there. Because you're right. I mean, everything is a Google away.
Yeah.
These days.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of free resources. And, it does start with mindset, because if you don't change your mind, things will continue to spiral. But you've got to start there and just believe, like you said, believe that you can, believe that you are capable of doing it, and it will happen with the little work. So
a lot of people get trapped in the whole generational mindset of this is how my family lives. Mm-hmm. This is how we've always lived. We're never going to be, we're never going to achieve anything. We're always going to have car payments. That is, don't let yourself get sucked into that, because you can do way more than you think you can. You can achieve great things no matter what, no matter where you came from.
Awesome. Listen, I'm just going to put a period right there, because ending on that note, just with hope, right? That was a statement of hope. That was a statement of, just don't give up on yourself. So yeah, I don't want to even muddy that with me. I think I probably did too much already after that. So go back and listen to that part, just a few seconds back.
Yeah, you can do it.
Yes. Absolutely. So Rachel, thank you so much for spending your precious time with us and really, giving some really good information that parents could use to help develop financial literacy in their children, to help them live amazing lives.
Yeah, I'm setting up a page for listeners specifically. If you go to rachelmurphycoaching.com/confidence, mm-hmm. I'm going to put a page up there and I'm going to have some free stuff on there. Like if you're like, that's the way she's talking about doing money, that's interesting. I would like to think more about that. I don't want you to run out and tell your kids, hey kids, I've just determined a new way we're going to do stuff. Don't do that.
Right.
Just hold yourself back for a little bit. I have a free spending tracker on there you can download. And I just want you to start keeping track of what you spend money on for your kids, so that if you decide to do this, you'll have a reference of, maybe this is how much money would be a good amount to turn over to them. And then I have my top 3 finance books I recommend for teens. And then there's a link there where you could go, if you want to listen to the podcast where me and 2 of my kids talk about life and leadership. There's a link on there also.
Wow, a lot of wonderful information. So please, please, please go to rachelmurphycoaching.com/confidence and get all kinds of information. And, also her podcast, which is raising confident teens. Okay, thank you, Rachel.
Thank you so much for having me. I had a good time.
Yeah, me too. It's been fun. All right. See you soon, maybe, I hope.
Yeah.
Okay. All righty, take care.
All right. Bye-bye.